If I could, I would like to call the Tuesday, August 29th, 27 Jackson County Board of Commissioners meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the invocation will be led by Bernie Morrison, co-president of Temple Beth Israel. Would you like to step to the microphone?
Thank you.
Yes.
The Judeo-Christian ethic comes from the Old Testament, and most of our joint beliefs are the same and from the same origin. From Leviticus 19, do not be indifferent to the bloodshed inflicted on your fellow human beings. In other words, take a stand against violence and intolerance and bigotry in any form. We believe in repairing the world, one small step at a time. We call that Tikkun Olam, literally fixing the world or helping everyone. To save a life of even a single child or make a tired old man smile is in a small way very beneficial towards our goal of helping the world. This provides hope when we work to defeat injustice and intolerance. Even if we disagree with someone's lifestyle or religious choices, non-judgmental acceptance goes a long way toward revering every human being. It is never too late to make a difference. So tolerance is our gift to each other, one person at a time, and reaching out to everyone with compassion, understanding, and acceptance. And now in prayer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav levarech et kulam. Blessed art thou, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, who honors and blesses every human being. Amen.
Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Leitner? Here. Commissioner Walls? Here. Commissioner Rice? Here. Commissioner Duckham? Commissioner Tompkins?
Here.
Commissioner Mahoney? Here. Commissioner Polacek? Here. Commissioner Elwell? Here. Chairman Shotwell?
Here. Thank you. Entertain a motion for approval of the agenda. A motion and support. Any corrections or additions to the agenda? Seeing nor hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, duly carried. Awards and recognition. At this time, I would like to make aware of the Board of Commissioners of Jackson County the truly heartfelt to thank you for your many years of service and support of the Jackson County Civil War Muster, the longest-standing non-battlefield Civil War reenactment, and an award received on August 26, 2017 by your chair. Any other awards or recognitions? Seeing nor hearing none, communications and petitions, we do have an item under this. Are there any other communications or petitions to be presented by the public? Seeing nor hearing none, at this time I would like the Board of Commissioners to begin discussion on a FOIA appeal. Administrator Overton.
First, I would ask if Mr. King is present to step up and state his case or position. Mr. King does not appear to be present. Frankly, I'm making a recommendation that the board uphold our decision on the FOIA request. Basically, the request, the reason we're in denial is he's requesting information we cannot provide. It's exempt. It's court information, and we can't. Well, they're exempt from the law. Period. And we did speak with attorneys. We spoke with the prosecutor as well. Since there's a court case involving Mr. King currently before the court, you cannot use FOIA. He could use subpoena, I suppose, that sort of thing, but bar that, it's not a FOIA case.
I make a motion we concur with Administrator Overton's recommendation.
Any questions? Commissioner Elwell.
Just one, Mike, the charges that you're talking about with the prosecutor, are they in relation to the same incident that he's requesting in the FOIA request?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further commissioner comments? Seeing no, hearing none, we have a motion on the floor with support to concur with the administrator controller's recommendation on the FOIA request of denial. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, duly carried. Special orders and public hearings, we have none at this time. We've arrived at the first opportunity for public comment. Public comment guidelines, each individual will state their name and have 3 minutes to address the board. You may only address the board once under public comment opportunity and may not yield your time to others. The board members will not debate nor answer questions at this time. This is public comment, first opportunity.
Peter Bormuth. Obviously, I'm interested in the board's decision on the SRI, but since the budget is on tonight's agenda, I wanted to speak once again to the commissioner's decision to issue $75 million worth of bonds to cover your pension obligations. I think this is a potentially catastrophic decision. I think that within the next 15 years, there's a virtual certainty that the Chinese currency will supersede the US dollar as a world currency of trade. I think that that will obviously have ramifications on the dollar. It will drop. I can't tell you how much. Our stock market will also correspondingly drop. Once again, I can't tell you if it'll be a quarter or a third or a half. But you are putting the future of Jackson County residents in jeopardy with this decision. It is essentially gambling, and I just would remonstrate with you to reconsider it. I think one of the things the budget will show is that there is places that still can be cut, particularly the sheriff's budget could be cut. It takes up too large of the pie as it is now. And I think that we should not gamble with the future of our county. What will happen is you will be responsible for the interest payments on this bond, and you will still be responsible for the payments to the pension, and you may not be getting the income you expect. This is just a really serious issue, and I hope you will give it some further thought. Thank you very much.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Public comment is now closed. We have no special meetings of standing committees. I entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the July 25th Board of Commissioners meeting.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any questions, comments, or corrections? Seeing none, all please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same sign. Duly carried. We've arrived at the consent agenda. Entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any items for removal for discussion under a later item? Seeing nor hearing none, Madam Clerk, are you ready? The consent agenda has passed unanimously. We've now arrived at the Standing Committee's report for agencies and affairs, chaired by Commissioner David Elwell. Commissioner Elwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have appointments tonight. The first is the Department on Aging Advisory Council. It's a vacant seat that expires December of this year. There were 2 applicants. The recommendation from committee is Rick Seegers.
Any other nominations from the floor? Seeing nor hearing none, all in favor to concur with Rick Seegers? Say aye. Those opposed? Commissioner Elwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 other committees, the Sanitary Code Board of Appeals, 2 public members. There are no applicants and no recommendations, and the same with the Emergency Management Council, which was Commissioner Plachek's former seat. we'd be looking for a commissioner to step up and seek that appointment next month. And that's it on appointments. Next, we have the JC underbody blade issue. And you'll recall in committee, there were a number of questions. We agreed to send it on and have it for standing committee. The questions were, in my opinion, sufficiently answered in the documents provided by JC and I would so move the request.
We have a motion and support. Any questions or comments? Seeing nor hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. Duly carried. Commissioner Elwell.
That's all I had to report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Standing Committee Human Services, chaired by Commissioner Rice. Chairman Rice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Human Services has no business to come before the board tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Rice. Standing Committee Personnel and Finance, chaired by Vice Chairman Phil Duckham. Commissioner Duckham?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have no business tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Duckham. Any unfinished business to come before the board? Seeing nor hearing none, at this time we've arrived at new business, budget presentation with Administrator Controller Overton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have our finance director tonight with us. He's toiled for many a long hour, he and many other folks, I might add, on the budget, and tonight he's got a presentation he'd like to give. Hi, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Overton. What we'd like to do this evening is present the 2018 proposed budget and the 2019 draft budget. And as you recall, 2 years ago, we instituted a 2-year budgeting timeframe where we adopt 1 year's budget and we review the draft budget for the following year. So again, this is the 2018 proposed budget, and that's my focus this evening. And this will be adopted on your regular board meeting. It's on September 19th. I always include this slide, which includes the priorities of the board that have been resulted from your strategic planning. And each year you reaffirm the priorities involved that are shown here. I'd like to start out with a little bit of budget history. And we look at the general fund budget over the years, and we focus on the last 4 to 5 years. We can see that we're fairly consistent with the totals, $46 to $48 million over the year, over that period of time. If we look at the net change from 1 year to the next, we find that from 16 to 17, it was a 0.8% increase. From 17 to 18, we're proposing a slight decrease, and there are a number of factors behind that number. Going from 18 to 19, based on some factors that we'll get into in a few moments, we anticipate a 1.9% increase in 2019. Go ahead.
As I'm wont
Yeah.
to do, you'll find is I'll chime in here and there if I may. Just bear with me on some of these things. But I do wanted to comment there because that 0.8 decrease, and as everyone knows, we have been cutting the budget now for years, and we'll make cuts internally to operations, and at the same time we draw down on our savings account, our general fund balance, and to try to minimize the damage to the services and the operations that we've done over the last, I think last 8 years, really. And so while that's going down, and the reason that shows going down right there especially, though, is we've come to a point where we do not have the ability to continue to draw down on our savings account. Just like your home budget, you're fine as long as you have some savings to hit. But once you get to the point where you really can't keep drawing on your savings, you really got to make some hard cuts, and this is that year we have to make some of those decisions, and that's why you see it that way. Go ahead, Jim.
If we look at where the money comes from, again, almost 50% of the total funds in the general fund comes from taxes, and included in taxes are real and personal property taxes, as well as $500,000 in transfer tax revenues collected by the Register of Deeds Department. Other categories, the next category is intergovernmental. Intergovernmental consists of federal and state grants, consists of revenue sharing from the state of Michigan, and mainly federal grants involved from, and also includes some reimbursement for the operation of the court system that comes from the state, and so forth. The next category, which is charges for services. This is court fines and costs. This is police services provided by the Sheriff's Department. This is Register of Deeds and Clerk's Office collection of recordings, transfer tax, and so forth. This is also the Equalizations Department collecting assessing fees for services performed to townships, and so forth. Other categories, transfer in, just spend a moment with that. We have revenues collected by other funds that are then transferred into the general fund to support the various programs of the general fund. For example, Department on Aging collects property tax revenues that go to support the programs of the Department of Aging department. We also have telephone fees that are collected and are transferred in to support the operations of the dispatch center and so forth. Other categories, we have a little bit of money collected from interest income and rents and so forth. If we look at the other side of the coin, we look at where the money goes, and we classify this by type of expenditure. We find that 54% of our total expenditures go toward personnel services. By personnel services, we mean wages and fringe benefits. Fringe benefits like health insurance, defined benefit pension costs, payroll taxes, and all the other fringe benefits that are given to the employees of the county. Contractual services include legal fees, computer services, all of the consulting services that are provided by professionals that allow us to function within the general fund. Other categories, again, transfer out. We have situations where the general fund supports the operations of other funds, like the Parks Department and like Friend of the Court, and the major one, the Child Care Fund. We spend over $2 million a year to support the youth center and to support the child care expenses that are incurred by that fund. Another way to look at the general fund expenditures is to stack them up each year, and we can see that we're fairly consistent with the total costs that we have over the last few years. We can also look at expenditures by group or by department, and we find that in this case, public safety comprises 28% of the total general fund dollars spent. The judicial category provides another 20, so roughly approaching 50% of the total dollars in the general fund go toward public service, public safety, and judicial. On subsequent slides, I'm listing the major departments of each category. The 28% of public safety, this is the sheriff's statutory functions, this is the road patrol, this is emergency dispatch, and this is the operation of the jail. And that's the major cost of that department. General government consists of the administrative departments that report to the administrator controller, and also consists of certain elected officials that perform general functions of the county, such as those listed there. That comprises 16% of the total cost. Again, judicial department includes the two court systems of the county, it includes the prosecuting attorney, it includes public defender costs, and so forth. Another category, less than 1%, we classified as legislative, and that's the cost of the Board of Commissioners, and so forth. The next category, comprising 7% of the total cost, is social services. This includes the medical examiner. This includes all of the programs of the Department of Aging, the operation of the senior center, and so forth. It includes the cost of the Veterans Affairs Department, and so on. The other category consists of appropriations. Appropriations are where we send money to outside entities to perform a service for us. And in this category would be things like the Enterprise Group that provides us economic development initiatives in the county. And we also have substance abuse monies that go. This is we receive revenue from the state for a portion of the liquor tax, and then a portion of that is by law required to be sent to the substance abuse entity who performs the services for residents of the county. Also in this category, we have a category called non-departmental expenses, and these are expenses that are not related to any one department, but still provide a benefit countywide. And in general, these things are like property and liability insurance, legal fees, audit fee, consultant fees, and so forth. There's also a portion in this category, retiree benefit health care costs. If we shuffled all of the county departments and stacked them up with the largest department at the bottom, largest in terms of the cost, we find that the Sheriff's Department in total, all of the departments involved, would be the largest department in terms of cost of the county. Working our way up, the next highest cost would be the district court, debt service, retiree health, and so forth. We like to provide this schedule every year to provide a perspective as to where the money goes as far as which department comprises most of the total. All of the services of the county are provided by 490-some full-time equivalent employees of the county, and the organizational chart provides the basic structure as to how these services are provided.
Mike, that was me. Just a comment. When I looked through here earlier today, I asked Mike to give us a copy of the FTEs for the last several years. I appreciate you sending that out to everybody, and it's worth noting for the public that that number has held steady for a number of years at 590. So, and it's continuing that way into 8 through 18, I think, correct?
Yes, let me just add to that, where we've had, just some minor increases is things what one might expect in IT, and the truth be told, without IT, everybody knows what it's like these days. If the computers don't work, nothing works. I'm sorry, but it is what it is, so we've added a couple bodies there over the last 6 years, but even then, when you look at the total in magnitude of almost 600 employees, to add a few here, less than half a dozen total over that time is substantial, saying something. Thank you very much.
And also, I believe, I can't quote the exact number, but if we
Dr.
look...
Hopkins has a question.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Doctor.
Yes.
On your chart here, general fund expenses by department, one slide back, what is that first one?
Remonumentation?
Yes.
Yeah, the state sends us money, and basically, there has been an ongoing process where a surveyor goes out at the township level and places whatever the markers in the ground to make sure that the land is properly surveyed. There's basically...
Yeah, let me chime in there, Jeff. I mean, you basically got it right. It's basically, that money is paid to pay the surveyors to basically remark everything. And, the technology is significantly improved, as you can imagine, from the chain and sticks they were using back in the day. Which, by the way, can create problems all of a sudden when it's not in the exact same spot, because now you got people who own that property, and, you can imagine some guy says, hey, wait a minute, I just lost a foot of property, how'd that happen? So, but at any rate, that's what that money is, remonumentation.
Carl?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I brought this up before, Jim, and just for verification. The 28% you have down for public safety, does that include dollars brought in by the jail millage, fines and fees, revenues that the sheriff's department generates from contracts with other municipalities?
No, it does not. I was looking at the expenditure side. In other words, I'm looking at the gross cost of each department. There is other data available, which I can share at any point, where we look at the net cost of the department. I think in previous meetings, we've shown that, departments that bring in the money then reduce the net cost of carrying those programs. But for consistency's sake, I was just looking at the gross dollars spent within the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, where does this leave us? Board policy says that we need reserves in the general fund from 18 to 24% of annual expenditures. What this means in terms of dollars is we need $8 to $11 million reserves in the general fund to be in accordance with this policy. What we're saying at this point in time is the fund balance at the end of 2018 will be around $10 million, which means that's about 23% of the total expenditures for that particular year.
Mike? Me again. What were we up to at one time? I think 32 or 34%? And so, yeah, so we've spent that down and finally got
That's
within
what,
policy.
when I spoke earlier, that's what I was referring to. We've drawn that down a little.
Thank you.
Okay, with respect to 2018, we had certain budget drivers, and the major one is healthcare costs. We are self-insured at the present time. Blue Cross Blue Shield processes the claims for us, and they are saying, based on trend analysis, that we'll unfortunately have rate increases of potentially up to 9.5% for the next 2 years. This is if we do nothing in terms of changing the healthcare programs that we have. If we translate this into total dollars, this is roughly an increase of close to $1 million a year. Now, the total cost that's reflected here is the cost of active employees and pre-65 retirees, the total of 9.7. So it's a little higher than when we speak of employee insurance costs. It's not that high. On the expenditure side, the other cost that we've discussed before is that in the recent years we've had increases in our defined benefit pension cost. The annual required contribution has increased. Up until 2018, there was a slight decrease, but still that totals $6 million that we are obligated to put into the pension fund currently. And again, this chart shows the history of it. You may recall there was a spike a couple of years ago when we closed the plan and so forth, and some change in actuarial assumptions. On the revenue side, there's a bit of good news. We anticipate that property tax revenues will increase 1.25%. That translates to about $250,000 within the general fund. We have other good news here. Clerk Register of Deeds Office anticipates that deed recordings and document fees, as well as the transfer tax in total, will increase by $500,000 relative to the year before. So there's an increase in terms of real estate activity and so forth, which is reflected in the transactions that are run through that office. Yep.
Just to, I feel my annual obligation to say that how we fund local government in Michigan is broken. That with Proposal A and Truth in Taxation, and for those who may not know what that is, basically what it comes down to is every year our revenues cannot go up by more than 5% or inflation, the lesser of the two. So if inflation is 1%, that means our revenue can't go up by more than 1%. Do we have any costs that go up by more than 1%? Do we have any costs that even get close to 1%? So what that means is our costs are always outpacing our revenue. And that's why communities across the state are finding themselves literally on the verge of bankruptcy, if not for potential like income taxes and other means of funding organization. We don't have that means. And frankly, they're all just continuing to cut. We've been cutting for 8 years. We'll continue to cut until some point, until some point we can't cut anymore. It's that simple. And then it's a matter of what services will we not provide our residents. I'm ever hopeful that the state will take a look at this and figure out how they're going to change it. I don't have the answer. I just know that you cannot continually take in less while spending more and expect. We can't operate our home that way, and you cannot operate local government that way. Thank you.
So all of these factors provided us with a big challenge, and that is when we started the budgeting process, we found that we had a $3 million deficit for 2018. So previously we discussed in general how to solve this problem. First one being the use of a defined benefit pension bonding. Secondly, some design changes with respect to our health care plans in general. And thirdly, there's also reserves in other funds. While Mike has said that the reserves in the general fund, we have seen have been applied to prior year, there are other reserves that accumulate in some of the other county funds that we can use in the general fund. And these are, for example, reserves in the health department, friend of the court, and there's some reserves in the child care fund as well that we'll be using to balance the general fund.
If I may speak to that just briefly, Jim, how those reserves get created, let me speak to that just a minute here. What happens is we budget, we'll say we budget for the health department, general fund revenues. So we'll transfer $1 million to that fund. If they only spend $900,000, we don't get to draw the money back. It goes into their reserve fund. Well, over years of time, it starts to add up. Next thing you know, they got $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 there. So we can't reach in and take the money back because it's already been designated for them. So what we end up doing is we will, instead of transfer $1 million, I'll schedule them to only transfer $700,000. Which would then require them to draw on their own account the $300,000 to make up the difference in their fund. Now, as Jim indicated, we can do that for 18, but that's really a one-time at that well because they don't have a whole lot of money, and we're taking it from a whole lot of different places to make up for it this year. But next year, because we're pushing, what is that, 800,000?
Yes.
Next year, we should see the mental health monies kick in, and that'll cover that hole there, is what the expectation is. Yes, sir.
Mike, isn't the child care fund the same way, only a larger amount?
It is.
And we did talk about that, right?
That's correct, yes.
And we set that lower for the contribution this year from the general fund for that purpose, correct?
That's correct again, yes.
Spend a moment on some of the other funds of the county, the largest being the health department, transportation department, child care fund, and friend of the court. I'm also providing a list of all of the other funds for which the board is responsible for providing a budget. So, and so forth.
Just to point out the total there.
Yes,
on
the
that.
total there, let's look at the 2018 budget column. That's it's over $133 million that is spent in all of the funds of the county.
I look at our general fund, go, oh, 48 million, that's a lot. But when I look at the 133 million, there's a significant amount of services the county provides to the 160,000 people who live here.
And as you can see there, the major increase really has to do with the transportation fund, which is ramping up for all of the construction at the township and state level.
And it's important to note on that they're funded through a different mechanism, correct? So although it shows up in our budgets because we approve it, separately funded.
That's the case for this particular slide. Other than the 101 at the top, that's pretty much the case for most of these, I mean, there's different funds available, and or it's transfers in and that sort of thing, other funds.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to explain why we carry a reserve of around 23%. That seems like quite a bit of money, but you have to remember that county government is required to make all other governments whole throughout the fall and winter on their tax bills, and that we are the ones that have to then hold back some type of reserve, or we end up doing a short-term bond sale. And some counties are in that position, and that doesn't work well. And Jackson County's always decided to make sure we have enough money within our reserve to carry us through until we actually receive our tax revenue in November from everybody. So that's where that balance comes from. And in the history of the last 20 years, we've gotten to within $100,000 a couple of times of that reserve. So, while Commissioner Elwell and I have been here through it all, it has been a lot nicer the last couple of years to have a nice reserve to be able to move the county through these type of things. So just to make everyone aware of that. And it also helps us show responsible budgeting to Standard & Poor's and Moody's, so when it comes time for us to do budgeting or do bonding or anything like that where we have to borrow money or other agencies within the county that need the full faith and credit of the county, it shows part of that responsibility also, and that the county is stepping up to do its part of managing its money correctly, so that way you as citizens can do school bonds and road improvement bonds and that type of stuff within your different jurisdictions.
Another area of our budget is our capital budgeting, and this is where we provide funds for long-term projects or repair-type projects where items, again, have to be fixed, have to be maintained. And our total capital expenses, including JCDOT, for 2018 is approaching $6 million. If we just look at the county portion, just to highlight some of the major items, the sheriff is requesting 6 new vehicles, and that's down from the year before. I believe typically he requests 7 or 8 each year to replace his fleet. And Meals on Wheels vans, each year one is replaced. With respect to Meals on Wheels, there's dedicated funding for that purpose. Department of Aging funds are available for that. The other projects that are scheduled for 2018, and in some respects are not very exciting projects. These are all items that are necessary. For 2017, we are spending over $600,000 to fix the 1929 elevators in this building. In 2018, we have to do the same thing for the courthouse. They're not quite as old, but still, those items are very expensive. We also have to fix a freight elevator in the Human Services Building, and we also have some significant roof repairs at the North Lawn Building, and so forth. And we have some other major projects, potential issues with the chimney in this building, and some other things that are involved. There's a few things looking to the future. There's some money set aside for Parks Master Plan, and there's money set aside for replacement of technology equipment, because there's always that need each year. So again, these are items that are necessary to be done, and we've been postponing these items, and again, as facilities would say, we have mature buildings here that require a lot of expense to maintain and so forth.
Jim, what was the total capital request? I don't remember the number.
Yes, total request for this year was over $4.5 million. And each year we try to keep the requests down to about $2 million. So we had to sort through all of the requests, and we looked at departments' priorities involved, and we had to do some hard decision-making in terms of
Yeah, we look at the health, welfare, and safety of not only the employees, but the community, and which is reflected here, as you can see. And while it's true, Jim, replacing elevators isn't very exciting, I can imagine a lot of excited people if the elevators stop functioning in an 18-story building like this one. Critical infrastructure improvement needs.
The next steps involved with this process, just to remind everyone of the process, is that we have detailed budget documents that will be online at the county's website by Friday. We have to advertise notice of the budget, notice of a public hearing, and notice of passage of the budget, which will occur again at the regular meeting September 19th.
And the devil is in the details when he talks about that budget document online. How many pages is that document?
Probably hundreds.
I know it's hundreds. I just thought maybe you had a better answer than mine. But it is literally line by line the detail of where the money goes, and I would encourage anybody who has an interest to go online and look at it. Again, not exciting, but it's all there for everybody to look at.
So I'd like to thank all of the individuals involved with this process every year. And again, it's more difficult this year because we had some hard decisions to make, but I appreciate the support of everybody.
Any questions from the commission? Mr. Elwell?
I was talking to my fellow commissioner for a second, maybe I missed it. Can you give us a timeline of when we'll be approving things?
September 28th.
You got that slide back, Jim?
Okay, I'm sorry. I was distracted by he elbowed me.
Oh, blame it on John. Oh, I see.
Budget documents go online September 1st, 2017. The advertisement appears in the media on September 9th, 2017. The public hearing shall occur at the General Board of Commissioners meeting in September 19th, 2017, and approval will also occur on September 19th, 2017.
Thank you. I was also looking at the 3 elevators there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we want to move there.
And, that I didn't mention that freight elevator in there, but that freight elevator over at the Human Services Building, again, talk about not exciting. It's a freight elevator, right? It's not for the public, but yet we prepare over 1,200 meals a day for seniors. 1,200 a day. Well, that food is stored in huge freezers and coolers and stuff in the basement, so it's got to all come upstairs to the kitchen to cook, and I can only think of the problems and calamity we'd have if they had to carry cases of food up the flights of stairs. So, critical elevator infrastructure need.
Further questions? You don't need any action today? No. Commissioner Duckham?
Just to comment, I'd like to thank you for the budget work you did. I know it's a big chore, but you always get it done for us and put it together in nice form. Thank you.
If I make a comment on that too, I would hasten to agree with you. What people don't realize is the finance department and the finance director, they have a full-time job 365 days a year. And when budget comes along, it's like, here, we need a book about this thick, redo it, and so it's just all added additional work on top of the day-to-day bills and, accounts receivable that we have to deal with. So thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Seeing no, hearing none, we've arrived at the second opportunity for public comment. Each individual will state their name and have 2 minutes to address the board. You may only address the board once under this public comment opportunity and may not yield your time to others. Board members will not debate nor answer questions at this time. Opening of second public comment. Anyone? Second public comment is closed. Commissioner comments. Did you want to speak, Peter?
I did, but that's okay.
Okay. Commissioner comments. Any commissioner comments? Seeing no, hearing none. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session in accordance with MCL 15.265 to discuss a legal opinion and to discuss collective bargaining strategies.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Madam Clerk, can you post the vote?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Nine zero.